Welcome to Mind Your Language and Your Business, the podcast where communication means business. We sit down with bold brands and brilliant minds to explore how language, culture, and connection drive strategic success in today's global marketplace. From translation tips to real-world wins, if it speaks to your business, we're talking about it. Let's dive in. I want to welcome the Renfro family to this podcast today. I am joined by Doug Renfro and Becky Renfro Borbola, and I know there's James Renfro also. Obviously, we're talking about an iconic Fort Worth brand, Miss Renfro's and Renfro's Foods. Doug Renfro is the president of the company, and I'll let you, Doug, introduce Becky and James.
Sure, we're an 85-year-old third gen also. So our grandparents started the company. Our dads were basically partners for half a century. And of the seven kids in the third generation, Becky, James, and I run the company now. And they're both senior vice presidents. I'm president, but in reality, we all have our little areas that we stay out of each other's way unless something is really important. We all vote on it. It has to be unanimous. But otherwise, I don't care who's running the label machine. James doesn't care about my spreadsheet on pricing, and Becky's going to Germany for a food show. We just divide and conquer.
So you have accomplished pretty much the impossible here. You've had a successful, long-running family business that you operate with your family members, and you're doing great.
So we operate with some of the family members.
Right. But still, when you talk to entrepreneurs, working with family members represents sometimes challenges, and you guys don't seem to have them. And so, congratulations on that. And I am of the group of people who say, I am not a native Texan, but I got here as soon as I could. I would add to it, and I discovered your salsa as soon as I could. This is my favorite.
Nice.
Habanero salsa. This is my office copy in the office refrigerator. It's loved and used. And I will also tell you that when both of my kids went to college and moved out of town and out of state, both of them separately were asking me, where do I buy Renfro salsa? Because it wasn't in whatever food store chain they had on the corner. So they were both looking for that. So we are talking about language in this podcast and how language affects what you do. And you are a global brand at this point, right? How does language show up for you?
Well, it's interesting. I told Doug, I said, our products are sold in Canada, and on the Canada product, we have to have Mrs. Renfro's in English and in French for Canadian sales. But when I go up to the distributor show once a year, there's the group from Quebec and Montreal. They come to the table, I give my presentation, and then they start talking French to each other. So I'm like, okay, maybe I need to learn French because it's a language barrier. And I don't know. I'm sitting there smiling like, are they saying we hate the product? We love the product. She looks ugly today. Yeah, I have no clue what they're saying. And then if they have a question, they'll come back and ask the question in English, but I have no clue what they're saying to each other.
And when you say, Becky, you have to have the product in French, you have to translate the label, right?
Every nutrition panel, ingredient statement, copy everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Quebec actually has a language police. I don't know if you knew that or not.
We, you'll see people skirt by the law because most of Canada doesn't actually speak French, but obviously they're wildly passionate in Quebec. And
Yeah.
we take the high road. We use professionals like your company to translate things for us and check all the boxes. Because what you don't want to do is halfway get your brother-in-law to translate it, and you find out the hard way that that was not the word for tomato.
I watched an older YouTube video where you, Doug, were talking about how you went from picante calling it picante to salsa, right? And the reason was because picante means spicy in Spanish and didn't make a whole lot of a sense to just say medium hot.
Yeah, when our
It's,
market developed in Texas, our dads got into taco sauce in the 70s. Very few people spoke Spanish who weren't Hispanic. And so no one noticed how stupid it was to say mild picante, medium picante, hot picante, which is really mild spicy, medium spicy, hot spicy.
mhm,
And salsa is simply the Spanish word for sauce.
mhm,
As more and more people started understanding Spanish and that got glaringly obnoxious, we morphed into medium salsa and dropped the picante altogether. But
mhm,
one thing I was going to mention is, Becky and I both and James travel internationally. Personally, we love to travel,
mhm,
and you'll see now, no matter what country you're in, you'll see guacamole, you'll see margarita, salsa, and what's interesting is I always order it because you don't know what their interpretation is. It could be quite interesting. We
mhm.
were in Germany, and there was quite obviously a family from Mexico had moved, and it was very authentic. And then you'll go somewhere in Ecuador, you'd think it's more authentic, and it's totally not what we expected. But there is a universality right now of words like salsa and queso, and we are very, very excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, I did not even know actually that there was a queso dip, right? Until this morning when I said to our team in the meeting that I would be talking to you this afternoon. And one of our employees who now lives in Iowa, she's originally from Mexico. Her husband is from Texas. She sent me a picture on Teams holding a jar of your cheese dip, and she said, Texan and Mexican approved. And she said, this is my favorite aside from peach salsa. So there have been more flavors to your salsa over the years, right? You're experimenting with different peppers, different
Always,
spices. And
I think we got 30 items or 29. We lose count.
I think 29 to 30, yeah. And we have the Carolina Reaper salsa, pepper salsa, and we have a now ghost pepper cheese sauce, queso sauce. Yeah.
so I remember, Doug, I think that years ago, you and I were both in a TCU prep class for applying for the ethics award.
That sounds right. I
Fort
think,
Worth, remember that?
oh yeah,
And we were kind of doing the discovery process to figure out how do we apply, like how does ethics even apply to my business? And what I remember from that is when you talked about how loyal you are to your recipes
mm,
and to the ingredients, and that you will not skirt anything, you will not take shortcuts, you will always use the best ingredients that go into those recipes. And so I know from this jar right here that your habaneros are grown in Colombia. So you're global in the sense that you're also sourcing ingredients for your products around the world,
we
right?
have we have peaches from Greece.
Mm-hmm.
We have the habanero from Colombia. We have so many things from other countries. Mango comes from Peru and the Philippines. So we're paying attention all the time to the whole world because it's way more impactful than when our dads grew up, they really focused on Texas pretty much. We don't have that luxury, but we also enjoy being a part of the global economy and not just local.
What does that process look like when you think of a new flavor or new product that you want to test? Because there's a fair amount of research, right, and development before you even roll
Right.
out a product.
We're big enough. We're like the biggest little guys. So we're big enough that we can't just randomly pick something and then find out that, oh, the world supply of that is 12 pounds in a commercial format. So we
Right.
will actually run out of things. So we can't have rutabaga salsa if we find out commercially you can't get rutabaga half the year. We have to have things where we can pull them year round
Mm-hmm.
and at a price point that we can still offer something to the everyday consumer. We're not the gourmet brand that's only 2% of the population can buy. We're pretty much in the
Mm-hmm.
sweet spot where everybody can buy it. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at trends, and the three of us are cursed to have to eat at the nicest restaurants in the country to see what's going on. But Just
That's terrible.
I know, but we'll see things they're really good, but they're too exquisite. As we saw somebody did a tomatillo white chocolate sauce one time. We're like, yeah, I'm sure that was delicious the night you had it with a big red wine, but probably not going to get that every day for your chips.
Probably it's not the mainstream.
Yeah. But when we started making ghost pepper salsa, we literally, our supplier ran out during the first or second run, even though we had a contract because it had been used for something. Somebody else bought it out from under us. So those are the sorts of things that why I don't have any hair and why we worry, some days.
Okay. Has your team faced any challenges that funny mishaps that have happened that you can link to either language or culture and the differences in those?
I've got one, and then Becky probably has more because she started doing all the international shows several years ago.
Yeah.
And things always happen that are funny when you don't speak the local language, especially. But early on, a major retailer was looking at having us create Spanish labels for Mexico. It
Mhm.
never went forward, but we went to the effort and we had four of the labels prepared. And as we were doing the final presentation, it turns out that whoever we used to interpret without preservatives, the way we had it on the label was without condoms. Would have been horribly inappropriate. Obviously, it was a true statement, but not what we were trying to convey. And so the colloquialisms, in French, to your point, if you ask three experts how to say medium in French, if they don't really have a word for it, they have to make something up. And
Mhm.
you get three experts, you get three answers. And
Mhm.
that's just on and we tend to operate in that space of like, yeah, we don't have a word for that. It's like, well, I have to have a label. So what would you call ghost pepper? There's things that we're doing that are craft beer salsa doesn't necessarily translate into German.
Right?
That's Becky. That's my story. You got to make up for
It's a it's a it's a it's a good one, and I wonder if it was Google Translate or equivalent that did that.
it. Only you
Potentially,
can do
because that sounds like that might happen. We had a customer once who needed to put the word conditioner, as in like a shampoo, and conditioner. And they used one of the built-in features on Amazon. They sell it on Amazon in other countries, and the built-in Google Translate feature on Amazon translated it as an air conditioner.
Ah.
So they had a bottle of the product and then this description in German or whatever the language was, and they were wondering why no one has bought it. Well, because it sort of kind
Didn't
of
make sense.
clashed with what the product really was. But that's what those automated types of translation do because they take it out of context. They don't consider the context. And so the easiest first translation for the word is what happens. And that's why we say we don't translate words, we translate messages. Unfortunately, on the label, if they don't have the word for it, you don't also want to end up with a paragraph long description of what a ghost pepper is, but
Right.
that might also happen. So you got another one, Becky?
So the first Anuga Germany show I did, the very first day, the first hour, this young man and his father comes running at me, he's going, Mrs. Renfro, Mrs. Renfro. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I love your salsa. I'm so excited. You're at the show. I want to be your distributor in Australia. And I went, okay, because we weren't in Australia. Okay. And he actually gave great advice. He said, I will pay you up front before it ever leaves your dock. Don't ever sell another distributor in Australia without getting paid up front. And that was great. And he said, but I want to be your exclusive. And that was 15 or 6, 2016. Yeah. And so he's still distributing our product in Australia, doing a great job. I went over with my husband and Adam took us around, showed us the stores we were in. And so that was a lot of fun to go over to Australia and see that. But we've been in Emart in South Korea. We're in Robinson Supermarket in the Philippines. We just set up new markets. We're in a lot of the Caribbean islands. People go to Turks and Caicos and they'll send Doug and I a picture of our products. And I know we're in other islands, but we just got a new exporter and he has got us into stores in Dubai in South Africa, and then he is increasing our business in the Philippines, and then he is working on Barbados right now for us. But yeah, we're in a lot of other countries.
Are you looking at other places in the world where you would want to expand?
Somebody sent me a photo of our product in Morocco, and thankfully it was a high res photo, and I was able to zoom in and say, "Oh, okay, our distributor in Madrid distributed that to Morocco. We'll have people distribute to multiple
Oh,
countries from us, and we don't know what's going on until someone sends us a photo. But so it's not that we're ignorant. We just we're not selling these people one at a time. I was gonna say, language also the issues can be in English because in
right.
Canada and the United Kingdom we have to remember flavor and color are two things you're gonna see on our labels a lot, and they have to have a U in them. It's still
Hmm.
English, but it's considered wrong if your English label in Canada has flavor without a U in it. It's embarrassing. So it doesn't even have to be another language to present a challenge.
Yeah, and language is so personal, right? And and people take it personally, and they know if you have taken the extra step toward them and acknowledge that they speak another language or another variant of a language, and it psychologically makes them much more likely to buy and like your product if they know that they can sort of mentally check
Yeah.
off the language and culture list.
We try to show that we consider it very important and we want to fit in and we want to be
Mhm.
culturally relevant. Not so much that the one time I did dress up like a Canadian Mountie for the entire show. They loved it. That was funny, but I found out later it was a felony to do that. So we don't do that anymore. But it
I
was
did not know that.
extreme example. I got vendor of the year, so it must have worked.
One thing is when I'm traveling to a country maybe that I've not been to before, when I went to Hong Kong for a food show, I'm very involved with Fort Worth, sister cities here in Fort Worth, and they actually have a protocol officer. So I would always call her and say, okay, I'm traveling to China, or I'm traveling to Japan, or I'm traveling here. What's protocol? And it's kind of interesting. There's some countries that our hook 'em horn sign is a very nasty symbol. You do not do that. And so it was really been interesting when she'll share that information. She'll send me information list of do's and don'ts in these countries. And I always find that really fascinating because you don't think about it when traveling to another country, like chewing gum in Singapore, throwing it on the sidewalk. They're going to cane you for that.
Food shows sound like fun. I've never been to one, but that sure sounds like something that um, everybody could enjoy. All right, manufacturing and making your product, that's all happening in Fort Worth, right?
Yeah, and that's if James wants to switch chairs with me, that's what he's in charge of. No.
No, he said no. Very
No, he's
quickly, he said no.
shy, but I'm shy. Yeah, Becky and I would not be able to go to London and Toronto and places and talk about it and sell it if somebody weren't there back there actually running 195 jars a minute while we're also filling food service containers for other clients. So
Hmm.
yeah, we're what are we 90 seconds from downtown Fort Worth, I think.
Hmm.
We have two city blocks in an old neighborhood that's on the edge of gentrification, and we're all three here every day that we're not traveling on business or personal.
And I know you do things like you have bilingual signage, right, in the facility, and obviously you do things like translate your employee handbook, and those are those are the types of things that people sometimes don't know where to start when they start hiring bilingual employees. And I know you got that down. And tell me, what has it done with your culture? Like, what does that do for your culture within your company to have multiple cultures working under one roof?
I like it. It makes us stronger the more diverse you are. It makes you
Hmm.
stronger. And you learn the best and the worst of each culture, and probably try to go with all the best. Occasionally, you learn things as far as they communicate something in a different way.
Hmm.
You always learn things, but we've even hired multiple generations within the same family. And I've seen that at other plants where they're using people from a Vietnamese community or
Hmm.
Polish, whichever community. It's not uncommon that they hire the friends and the family and everyone because once you find a hardworking set of people and you want to get more of them.
And I think, I always consider that the highest form of honor, really, when an employee refers a member or a friend and they tell them, hey, you know what, this is a good place to work at and they treat me right. And so that speaks a lot, to who you are as employers too, that people would do that and bring family members who end up working with you. That's amazing.
Most of them, when they come to work for us, they end up retiring with us, which is awesome. I mean, we've had so many employees that retire and then they still come back. We have a Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we always have an employee lunch. And many of the retired employees will come pop in for that lunch because they know we're having it. And that's fun to get to see them. The other thing that we found is when you have representatives come in and talk about your employee benefits, we must have a dual language person or we have two separate meetings, one in English, one in Spanish.
Somebody did not understand safety instructions. What could happen in your place? Like somebody will
And
fall into a barrel of spices or red
I don't even want to say them out loud. Yeah.
I mean, you can say a lot in just if everybody knows what it means, it's perfect, right?
I will tell you something interesting I started doing is it was important to me at our holiday, that meal that Becky talked about, the Wednesday before
Mhm,
Thanksgiving. I would give
mhm,
a little small talk, thank you for all the work during the year. Here's some things going on construction
mhm,
wise. And so I started, as we got a workforce, a large percentage of whom didn't really speak English, I started having somebody in the office. I would write out my talk. They
mhm.
would translate it in Spanish. I would read a paragraph. They'd read a paragraph in Spanish. And that was better than nothing. But over time, I started taking Spanish to the extent that like I feel good about pronouncing it. I may not know what I'm saying, but I know how to pronounce it. And so I
Mhm.
started reading the Spanish part myself. And in Spanish, I started with her having translated for me. Do not think that I am fluent in Spanish and come up and talk to me after this. But I was able to mostly in the first year they gave me they like did a standing ovation because they were seeing me. I said, I'm putting myself at risk. I'm going to say some things wrong. I'm going to mess it up, but it's important to us that we communicate to you in your language. And they really seem to enjoy it. I mean, partly because I'm sure it's funny, but also that we're making an effort. I don't understand why somebody would give the whole talk in English and knowing that half the audience didn't know what they said.
Right, right. And I'm sure it's appreciated, again, it's an inclusive gesture by which you're telling them we're happy you're here and we're trying. We're not perfect, but we're trying.
When
That's
Becky and I went, the first time we went to Germany for the Nougat show, I learned how to say I don't speak German in German. And it was quite handy because I will do things like take a taxi to a grocery store and buy all the kinds of salsa-esque things that are there because I want to
Mhm,
study the trends locally. But I
mhm.
would find myself in situations that was before Uber was really big, and you'd be like, "Oh, I don't know how to get back to the hotel." And people start speaking Germany. I'm like, I don't speak German. And most of them, they'd be like, "Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, what you want to do is," because they all spoke English.
Now that we have Uber, I find myself talking to every single Uber driver, and my first question always is, where are you from? What language do you speak? And I have found resources that way. And most recently, I was in an Uber, and he was a gentleman who used to be an interpreter for US troops in Afghanistan. And he
Wow.
spoke Pashto and some other language, and he's driving an Uber in North Texas. And I'm going, please send me your information. Like, we need your language occasionally, and we don't have enough resources for that.
Wow.
I don't know if you knew this, but we're all in North Texas, and the last census, they asked, they always ask the question of if you do not speak English at home, what language do you speak? At the family dinner table, just
Mhm.
at home. We have 72 different language minorities in North Texas.
Did not know that.
No one knows that. It shocked me too. And I know, we have customers around here, obviously, and we know that someone has more employees who speak Vietnamese and someone has more employees that speak Spanish. But the rest of the world outside of Texas, they think of Texas and they think Spanish.
Mhm.
It shocked me that there are so many. 72 different language minorities, and that's people who prefer to speak that language at home
Wow.
and think of all of their jobs and what people could do to make them a little bit more welcome and a little bit more included, which seems like something you guys have certainly cracked. I love the story about how the retirees come to your Thanksgiving meal and they feel free to do that and they feel that they're welcome to do that. That is amazing. So what's next for Renfro Foods? What's around the corner? What are you looking forward to the rest of this year and next year?
This has been a fun year for growing our export business. You know, when COVID happened, the current exporter, and with the prices of containers going up, it just kind of got really quiet. And now that business this year, it's really starting to grow, which is great. The new exporter that we started with in February, he's going to come by and we're going to meet and talk about other markets that they want to pursue with us, which will be great. Really excited about that. But yeah, so I don't know what they're looking at, but I can't wait to see what they do. They already have connections to the major grocery stores in Dubai and South Africa and the Philippines. And so they know I bring great product to them. And so they're excited about what they're going to do with our product as well. So that's what we're doing. Any new market, we're ready. I believe we've gotten back into Emart in South Korea, which is great. And that was a fun story. I was at a Paris show and 5 people came up, and it's this one young lady leading. And then the next day, she came up with like 7 more people. And the next day, she came up with this entourage of 12 people, and everybody is standing behind this one gentleman. And you knew he's the CEO of the company, and I didn't know who they were. Their name tags did not say, but it was the large, it's like our Walmart, but it's Emart, South Korea. They brought in a container load, they paid up front, which that's our favorite thing is they pay up front.
And locally, we just paired with the 100-year-old Dalton's Best Made Pickle Company to do a Mrs. Renfro's spicy pickle salsa, and it's got their logo on it, which is fun locally, but globally, people know that anything with pickles right now is super hot. So we're really excited about the item anyway.
Hmm.
And we were just promoting in the US initially, and like 3 weeks ago or so, our Canadian contact reached out to Becky, like, hey, can we get the pickle salsa? And it's like, okay, hold our beer. We're gonna get the translations going in French for spicy pickle salsa.
Are you still doing any of the original Chow Chow?
We are,
You
yeah.
are?
James does it once a month for 3 hours, I think. Yeah.
Once a month for 3 hours.
Really, it's all they did when we were children. It was like 99.9% of our sales, and now it's less than a tenth of 1%, but it's still a very Southern staple for a subset. I
Some
personally,
loyal fans.
I can't eat beans without hot chow chow on it. It's just not right.
Okay, last question. If anyone's listening to us talking here who's considering either going outside of the US, trying a new market, looking at a new culture, different language spoken, or they're looking at hiring bilingual employees, because labor shortages probably here to stay, and there might be some pockets of resources around, right? That people don't think into tapping or addressing them directly in their language. What would be the one thing that you would tell them to do? Anything from your decades of learning this business and growing, what would be some of the best things that someone could do?
Definitely do a lot of research, especially if you're going to sell to another country. Do research. I would advise having a great exporter, someone that's in the business that takes you through the process, does all the paperwork for you so that it doesn't get stuck in custom.
Yeah, research, including talking to all your friends in the business. We've really learned and benefited from the experience of others, which is what we do every day in all the aspects of our lives. Life's too short to try to figure it out yourself. And use professional translators, professional accountants, professional law. Don't try to do this stuff or just Google how to do it yourself because you're going to get results that are commensurate with that.
Hmm. All right. Well, I cannot thank you enough for visiting with me today and for doing this and for talking about your business. It truly is an honor because not just around here in Fort Worth, but now in so many places around the world, people know who you guys are and what you do and know your product and love your product. So I consider this truly an honor. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Well, thanks for letting us share and visit.